My name is Ali. I'm the founder of Outbound Acquisition. In this video, we're going to be discussing how you can 2x your outbound volume, your dials, and your cold email, and scale MRR without increasing SDR headcount and without a bloated tech stack, all just using one tool called Clay.com. Now, Clay has revolutionized the sales automation space. You may have already heard of it at this point. But if you are a company that has 2 to 100 plus SDRs, your revenue is about, anywhere from a minimum million to as high as $100 million plus, this video will be relevant to you because we're going to help you remove the three main bottlenecks that are keeping your SDRs from breaking through their quotas. So number one, we remove them from all manual research tasks, all the data entry, sales enablement, the list building, enrichments, prospect research. They need to be removed from that so that they can focus their time on more high leverage tasks. Number two, maximizing speed to high priority lead. So obviously getting speed to lead under 5 minutes is huge, but then also ensuring that your SDRs are not just reaching out to any lead in their CRM, but they have a system to know which leads are scored the highest on their qualification and readiness to buy. So they spend their time speaking to the best fit leads all day. And then next, adopting a modern tech stack. Now, most tech stacks are expensive, they're outdated, and they're a massive cost center for companies. We help you scale your best reps playbook with just one tool and a minimal tech stack, allowing your sales reps to be far more efficient and reducing a massive cost center for your company. Now, before I dive into how this all works, feel free to check out our case studies. We have video testimonials and interviews going through how we've helped over 40 plus B2B companies implement these systems successfully into their company. Not just getting a direct revenue benefit, but also by doing so, we've helped them book meetings and close deals with some of the biggest companies in the world. Fortune 500 all the way down to small SMBs. So what is the main problem? The main issue is that your SDRs spend 90% of their day not selling. And we define selling as actively, on the phone, speaking to prospects, pushing deals forward. Most of their day is spent doing manual research and data entry, right? They spend 30% of their day building lists and prospecting, 20% of their day qualifying leads. They spend, almost half their day doing manual research, doing individual outreach to leads, whereas they're not spending any of their time doing what you hired them to do, which is to sell. Only 10% of their day is actually, speaking to prospects on the phone, pushing deals forward. So the issue with this is that this has certain negative externalities, right? So you're going to continue to hire more SDRs on 5 to 6 figure salaries who end up doing more non-revenue generating work, right? You deal with a constant cycle of burnout, SDR churn, because they're, getting frustrated with the repetitive low impact tasks. And what you end up doing is building an inefficient system that will collapse at scale. So the first step to resolving this is knowing your numbers. Okay, so before you speak to us, even for yourself, you have to understand what your KPIs are and where exactly the bottleneck is, because it's only after knowing that we know where we can help you. So first of all, when it comes to inbound, what is your speed to lead? What is your opt-in rate? So when a lead comes in, how soon are you responding to them? And then off your, opt-in forms, your lead magnets, what percentage of leads are actually opting in and giving their information to you? Right? When it comes to outbound, what percentage of your SDR's day are they spending doing manual research and data entry versus actually selling? How many qualified meetings with accounts are being set? When it comes to cold calling, how many dials per day? What's your connection rate? How many meetings booked per day? What is the meetings per contacts dialed? When it comes to cold email, what's your daily sending volume? What's your positive reply rate? What's your positive reply to meeting booked rate? What is your speed to lead when somebody opens an email or replies positively? You have to know these numbers to figure out where your bottleneck is. And then Clay.com becomes a very powerful tool to help you eliminate these sequentially. And if you don't make these changes, what is the consequence of inaction, right? There's two main things: slow outbound pipeline growth and a very high cost of sale. So when it comes to slow outbound pipeline growth, right, scaling your SDR team, typically means scaling your costs, but does not always mean scaling your profits, right? Scaling outbound teams is not linear. Let's take the example of Bob, the SDR, right? If he is your best SDR right now, he's smashing through quota every single month. He is a superstar, right? You think, okay, if I just get, 10 more Bobs, I'll be good to go. Let's take the example of Bob, the SDR. If Bob is your best SDR, he's smashing through quota every single month. He's a superstar. You just may think, okay, if I just, get 10 more of him, we'll scale. But the reality is, you may think it's going to be a linear growth, but what ends up happening is as you get more SDRs, there tends to be a drop off. And you may have seen this already and are struggling to get out of this cycle, right? Because the reality is you cannot replicate the performance of your best sales rep. What makes one sales rep great is different to the next, which is why it's almost impossible to consistently hire solid sales reps. So you can still scale and hire, but it's just going to be more inefficient, right? And this is why 2/3 of SDRs fail within their first 3 months. If we come back to the Pareto principle, 80% of your pipeline comes from 20% of your best SDRs, with the rest contributing less. Okay, so even if you do find another solid sales reps, you're going to spend a ton of time interviewing, looking at resumes, hiring, training, only to deal with 2/3 of churn, to lose 2/3 of them. And you're going to spend a lot of time doing this until you find a good fit. Now, most companies, what they'll do in this case is hire an SDR manager to look after the SDRs, another full-time salary, because your entire team of SDRs are not self-sufficient. So do you see how this will eventually lead to massive inefficiency in your company? The next thing is the high cost of sale, right? What is the cost of sale after hiring all those SDRs? Now, unless you're bringing in deals north of 50 to 100K, the SDR math does just not add up. And even if you are closing larger deals, SDRs are still a huge cost center, especially given the fact that most of their work can be automated now with modern technology. So let's take an example over here. If your average SDR quota is 19 meetings per month, but most SDRs typically has, it's an 80% of quota, let's say, right? If 80% show up, that's 12 meetings held per month, 3 per week, and probably 8 of them are qualified, right? So of those qualified meetings, if you guys are closing well, you're maybe closing a few deals if you're lucky, right? So considering the average SDR salary is 60K a year, you're paying 5K a month for 8 to 10 qualified opportunities and maybe 1 to 2 deals if you close at 20%. This does not include payroll, taxes, commissions, your AE salary, tech expenses. It all eventually adds up after a certain point. But what's really important to understand, right, is SDR automation is actually good for your SDRs. We are not here to replace your SDRs, not at all. We're here to actually empower them. But the issue is that the manual outreach day after day wears your SDRs down. It's incredibly taxing on their emotional health. And automating that arduous work actually frees them up and empowers them to do discovery calls and filter for more qualified opportunities. And what this also means is your AEs benefit even more, because rather than taking a bunch of discovery calls that are unqualified and waste their time, they now focus on the highest value prospects, increasing your conversion rate and increasing your overall company morale, reducing churn, and helping you actually scale. So we're now going to dive into the 3 bottlenecks, starting off with removing your SDRs from all manual research tasks. Okay. Now, your list is your strategy, right? You have to take time to put together a solid list, which is why it makes sense that most companies use their SDRs to build, accurate lists of their ICP, do the extra prospect research to maximize the chances of getting positive replies and booking in. However, modern tech has now evolved. With clay.com, you can automate all this research at scale in a matter of seconds. Now, let's look at the typical outbound motion before clay.com. Right, you typically have your ICP profile. Let's take an example over here of law firms with 10 to 50 employees, revenue above $10 million, and based in the USA and Canada. A sample ICP here. Okay, now this data anybody can get. You can go to ZoomInfo, Apollo, Sales Navigator, do the searches, and just get those lists. Right now, that's level 1 of what companies do. Now, if you put in more effort into your outbound, you may be at level 2, which is okay. I'm going to make my SDRs do more custom prospect research. Right, so let's look at, find out what's their tech stack using certain tools, what's their funding, their budgets, what's their content talking about right now, are they hiring for a certain role? So the SDR will spend, 4 to 10 minutes per prospect doing manual research. So there's level 1 of just the ICP, and then level 2, hopefully you're doing that to get more research on your prospects, right? Now, what is the issue? Now, the reason why most outbound sucks is you have a large proportion of companies just doing level 1, which is just getting an ICP profile and then launching campaigns. That's called a spray and pray campaign, hoping, doing massive volume and hoping something sticks. Okay. Which obviously, as you can imagine, is not very efficient. It's expensive and doesn't work after a certain point. And level 2 is slow and expensive, right? Companies that take the time to actually do the prospect research, think of like ABM marketing, right? But it's very slow, very labor intensive. It's going to increase your tech stack spend a lot to get tools to find this data. And it's very difficult to scale, right? But now with Clay, the whole game is now changed, right? Because one of the many things Clay is an AI web scraper that uses web scraping and ChatGPT to find all publicly available data on the internet on a certain prospect or company. So if it is available publicly, Clay can then find it rather than your SDRs doing the manual research, right? So we have the same thing, so the same ICP profile. And by the way, we're going to talk about this later when it comes to how Clay has, democratized the use of data. But you can actually get more accurate ICP data from Clay as well, because they have 50 plus data partners, plus they use waterfall enrichment to make sure that your costs are saved to a large degree and your coverage is maximized. We're going to discuss this later. I'm not going to get into it now. But the next thing is at level 2, that level 2 is that that custom prospect research. With Clay, you can now automate all of this. A very small list of examples, scraping websites of certain keywords, intent signals, specific open jobs, tech stacks on websites, job descriptions, website traffic, online reviews from Trustpilot, Google Maps, funding round data, lookalike companies. If a prospect is posted on LinkedIn about a certain topic or keyword, marketing budgets, job changes on LinkedIn, estimated ad spend, investors, the list goes on and on. And this is all in a matter of seconds with no human input and at scale. Okay. And what you can do at this point is obviously use this data for your campaigns, but also score leads based on these various data points so your SDRs know which leads to target first. Now, here are 3 examples from Clay itself showing you what is possible. Okay. In this situation, we have taken recent news for each of these companies, and we've used Clay's Google News integration to find articles. And as you can see, what's happened over here is we've taken the entire article, summarized it using ChatGPT, and then used ChatGPT to format that as an opener for a cold email. Right. We then have an example over here where we have found all active open jobs for companies. We have then at scale for, again, thousands of companies, summarized the entire job description and then use that to infer the pain point of the company. So, what exactly what problem they're trying to fix by hiring for this role, and then use that to format an opener. Now, this is, again, is happening at scale, looking at thousands of jobs. Think of how long this would take your SDRs to do this manually. And in this case, we're doing this for thousands of companies with thousands of data points at scale all at once. And the final example we'll show you right now is where we've taken recent LinkedIn posts for certain prospects. Again, use ChatGPT to summarize the entire post and then format that as an opener for a cold email. Now, again, the possibilities are truly endless. Clay can find all publicly available data on any prospect or company in seconds. And then we can use ChatGPT to format that however we need. The most important thing is for you to understand, what do you define as a best fit lead? What custom level 2 prospect data do you need that is relevant to your offer and that can maximize your conversions? And as I said, this data can be used as an opener, as you saw above, but also for scoring leads and also for your SDRs in their CRM. So if you want to unlock your SDRs, you have to remove them from the manual grunt work. The reason your SDRs typically cannot hit quota is because they spend all their time building lists, doing manual research, qualifying accounts, enriching, phone numbers and emails, manually writing emails, and then reaching out to, any lead in their CRM. But with Clay, they can now spend their entire day focused on cold calling, the best fit leads sent to their CRM, enriched with rich prospect data, warm calling email leads that recently opened an email or replied positively in under 5 minutes. Again, warm follow-ups on LinkedIn, sending voice notes, humanizing that outreach, building relationships, spending their time doing creative personalized follow-ups, Loom videos, phone calls, direct mail, content, social selling. And after a certain point, once they are truly unlocked, they can then even start to build a personal brand under the umbrella of your company. And once you have multiple personal brands for your companies growing together, the compound effect is significant. So we're now going to move on to maximizing speed to high priority lead. Okay, so 2 questions for you. Are your SDRs reaching out to any lead in their CRM, or do they have a system to only reach out to the most qualified and high priority leads? And then number 2, when you get signs of engagement on inbound or outbound, how soon are they contacting these prospects? Is it 5 minutes, a couple of hours, a day, a whole week? Speed to lead and account scoring are massive levers that you can pull to maximize your SDRs and get the most out of them in terms of their quota and their output. Okay, so if you are not scoring accounts for your sales team before they cold call or cold email, you are losing millions every quarter. Here's why. So without Clay, your SDR researches and calls any lead in their CRM. There's no real system to it. right? But with Clay, a Clay operator builds your lists for you, scores each account based on specified ICP plus that level 2 custom research data and all the criterion that you need for it to be a best fit lead. Okay, they deliver these scored enriched leads to your SDRs directly in their CRM so they know exactly which leads to go after. Maximizing your chances of conversion and making sure your entire team is only speaking to qualified accounts 100% of the day. Do you notice how sticking with option A keeps your team from exceeding their quota goals? Your SDR and BDR team has the power for incredible efficiency, but you have to free them from the bottlenecks that are holding them back and equip them with the playbook so they spend 100% of their day actually selling. Now, if you are not building systems to get speed to lead to under 5 minutes, you are absolutely losing millions every single quarter. To speed to lead without Clay, there's no system. Your SDR reaches out to leads when they find the time. But with Clay, here's what happens on inbound and outbound. Now, when it comes to outbound, the moment you get a positive reply to an email, the moment someone opens an email a couple times, a webhook notifies your SDRs right away to then auto dial these leads in under 5 minutes, making sure that you catch these leads when they're the most hot and convert them right away. And when it comes to inbound, the possibilities are even more endless, right? Let's take two examples: website visitors and lead form opt-ins. So looking at lead form opt-ins, somebody that fills in a form for an event, for a lead magnet, the moment they fill that in, we can then send their data to a Clay table to then enrich that contact with all the custom level 2 research data that you want. The same thing goes for website visitors. As I'm sure you now heard of RB2B, it's a tool that can find whoever comes to your website, it can find out exactly who they are. So using RB2B, we can then get that person who comes to your website, send their name and their data straight to a Clay table, enrich them, get their information, get that research done. And then from there, at the Clay table level, we can then set up automations to auto send an email, a very intent-based custom cold email, alluding to the fact that, they've either been on the website or signed in a form, using the data that we now have with the Clay table to, again, push them to convert right away. And then also notifying your SDRs to call them in under 5 minutes and maximizing your speed to lead. Moving on, the final point is adopting a modern tech stack. Now, modern sales is all about data, right? If your outbound motion is driven by cold calling, for example, if your team does not have accurate phone numbers and they're stuck leaving voicemails, you are never going to grow your company. And unfortunately, accurate mobile and email data is getting more difficult to come by these days. In addition, most tech stacks are expensive and outdated. As I'm sure you know, as you start to scale, tech stack becomes a massive bloat and a massive cost that eats into your bottom line, right? Most teams spend 150, 200K per year on data providers and sales engagement platforms at a minimum. For example, Zoom Info makes you sign a 1-year commitment and sometimes multi-year contracts, 5-6-figure contracts to get access to just that basic ICP level data, right? So how do companies solve for this? Because, number one, they want to maximize their coverage. So what they do is they end up signing multiple annual deals with multiple data providers. So what ends up happening is they have a patchwork of different data providers. They're locked into annual contracts and your costs start to skyrocket. But what if I told you we can generate more accurate data than all these tools combined without sinking 7 figures into a team or 6 figures into overpriced sales tech? What Clay.com has now done is it has democratized data. Okay, and one of the key ways to see this is their waterfall feature, right? So Clay uses something called waterfall enrichment. So for example, if you're looking for a phone number, right, rather than having subscriptions to 5 different phone scraping tools, what you can now do is Clay has all of these tools built into their system and will check every single provider for you. So instead of having 5 different subscriptions, you just have a Clay subscription. It'll go through each provider, and if it finds it at the 4th provider, it won't use the 5th one, and it won't charge you for the first 3. A lot more efficient, a lot more cost effective, right? So this is an example over here where we have a list of LinkedIn profiles and we want to find their numbers. Now, as you can see, we have 5 different tools here: Forager, Lead Magic, Rocket Reach, Nimbler, and People Data Labs. And what it's done is if it finds it at the first level, it will not use the rest, and vice versa. So here it found it on Rocket Reach, not on the first 2, it then charges for the rest. So as you can see, this is far more cost effective than having 15, 20 annual subscriptions that you're locked into right now. It's also a centralized database. So instead of your SDRs jumping across 7 different softwares, one to enrich, one to validate, one to push data somewhere else, Clay just does this all in one. So the strongest competitive edge that you can build for your outbound motions is the following. So at the base, you have one Clay operator. They automate all your Clay workflows, the account research, all the email and mobile enrichments, the lead scoring, and they deliver these enriched leads to your reps in their CRM. Right? You then have the SDRs and the BDRs who then take these enriched leads from their CRM and then start to be in selling mode all day, every single day. Right? They exceed quota because they're spending their time actually selling. And then once they filter for the qualified opportunities at the discovery call level, you then have your AE who's just coming in to close qualified deals. Again, your sales team before Clay and your sales team after Clay. Clay becomes the foundation of everything. And then your SDRs and your AEs are working on higher leverage tasks, making sure that your organization scales faster, your costs are far lower, morale is higher, and you can actually start to scale your business and your MRR. So the overall result is you're doubling your output, you're reaching out to leads faster, and while you speak to best fit leads at a fraction of the cost, because you do not have an SDR, endless SDR salaries and a tech stack bloat, and you empower your team. So if this sounds exciting, please book in a call below. We would love to chat to you, understand what your bottlenecks are, and then how we can leverage Clay to optimize your organization for scale and hit your sales targets.